The House has before it House Bill 1181, which has been read. Mr. Chief Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, engrossed House Bill 1181 was introduced by Representative Striley and other House and Senate sponsors. Engrossed House Bill 1181 is a bill for an act to amend and reenact Section 16.1-13-08 of the North Dakota Century Code relating to filling vacancies in the office of the U.S. Senator. Mr. Speaker, your Government and Veterans Affairs Committee recommends amendments as follows, and when so amended, recommends do pass by a vote of 8 yeas, 6 nays, and 0 absent not voting. Mr. Speaker.
Representative Rohr.
Mr. Speaker and members of the Assembly, your Government and Veterans Affairs Committee recommends a do pass as amended on House Bill 1181 by a vote of 8 to 6. House Bill 1181 relates to filling vacancies in the office of the U.S. Senator. Section 1 of the bill states that when a vacancy occurs in that office from this state, the governor shall call a special election to be held within 95 days to fill the vacancy. It further states that if the vacancy occurs within 95 days of the expiration of the term of office for that office, no election may be held to fill the vacancy. In this case, the position would be filled by the next general election. The committee heard no testimony in opposition to the bill. According to the National Conference of State Legislatures, 14 other states use a special election. Currently, in addition to North Dakota, similar bills are being heard in Montana and Maryland. The primary reason for this legislation is to ensure that it is a vote by the people rather than the gubernatorial appointment to fill a vacancy in the U.S. Senate. This election process occurs already to fill a position vacated in the U.S. House of Representatives. Mr. Speaker and members of the Assembly, your Government and Veterans Affairs Committee recommends a do pass on House Bill 1181 as amended by a vote of 8 to 6, and we ask that you concur.
Is there any discussion? Representative Mock.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, will the bill carrier yield to a question?
Representative Rohr, will you yield to a question?
Yes, Mr. Speaker.
Representative Mock.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And my question to the bill carrier, the language only addresses the vacancies regarding the United States Senate. I'm curious if we have any similar provisions in law regarding a vacancy for our congressional seat, any of the statewide offices, or even legislative offices.
Representative Rohr.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm going to yield to the committee chair.
Representative Casper.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Representative Mock. Currently, for the United States House of Representatives, that is required to be an elected position. It's not appointed. When you come to offices that are statewide in the state of North Dakota, that would be our tax commissioner, insurance commissioner, et cetera, the governor appoints if there's a vacancy. When you come to legislative openings such as any one of us here in the chamber, the law was amended 12 or 14 years ago to require that the district chair of the party whose representative held that office, the district committee of that party would fill the appointment until the next election.
Representative Mock.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Would the committee chair yield to another question?
Representative Casper, you yield to a question?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I will.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My question to the chairman, you mentioned that a vacancy for our United States House of Representatives seat would be subject to an election, but I'm reading the code in North Dakota Century Code 16.1, and there's no such provision in law regarding a vacancy of our United States congressional seat. Could the committee chair explain how the vacancy would be filled using a special election?
Representative Casper.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Representative Mock. I'm reading from Section 16.1-13.08.1. Special election to fill a vacancy in the United States House of Representatives due to a catastrophic circumstance. If a vacancy occurs in the office of representative in Congress due to a catastrophic circumstance in which 100 or more representatives across the United States are no longer able to serve, and the next regular or special session is more than 75 days in the future, the governor shall immediately issue a writ of election calling a special election to fill the vacancy. The date of the election shall be 49 days from the date of the proclamation, and the following deadlines shall apply. Certificate of endorsement as described in Section 16.111-09 affidavits of candidacy described in Section 16.1-11-10, and statements of interest described in Section 16.1-09-03 for those candidates nominated by political parties currently established in the state shall be filed with the Secretary of State by 4 p.m. on the 40th day before the election. If the election occurs in an election year, the precincts previously established by the county shall be utilized. If the election occurs in a year without a scheduled election, the Board of County Commissioners must establish the precinct boundaries by the 40th day before the election. The Secretary of State shall certify to the county auditors the names of the candidates for the election on the 39th day before the election. Absentee ballots shall be made available to qualified electors by the 30th day before the election.
Go ahead, Representative Mock.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I appreciate the committee chair responding and explaining what would happen in the event of a catastrophic event where there's more than 100 congressional seats that are vacant. But I'm curious if we have anything in law that would specifically state that a special election is used to fill the vacancy if our congressional seat is vacated and it is not due to a catastrophic event. In other words, if we have a vacancy by resignation, by death or illness or some other means, the answer was that we have a special election, but this language only relates to catastrophic and large vacancies. What is our provision if there's only the one? And I don't know if the chair or the bill carrier would yield to that question.
Mr. Speaker, I yield to the
Casper.
question. Mr. Speaker and Representative Mock, under the U.S. Constitution, Article 1, Section 2, when vacancies happen, the representation from any state, the executive authority thereof shall issue writs of election to fill such vacancies. It's the United States Constitution.
And if I may continue, and thank you, I'd like to thank the committee chair. And I had done some digging as well. The North Dakota Constitution, Article 5, Section 8, it's kind of a special privilege. I don't get to quote the Constitution every day. This is fun. It states that the governor may fill a vacancy in any office by appointment if no other method is provided by this Constitution or by law. And the mere lack of a provision for filling a single vacancy for the congressional seat that North Dakota has to the United States Congress, according to the North Dakota State Constitution, that vacancy would still be filled by the governor, provided any other provisions regarding proximity to elections. So I'm a little concerned that we're addressing and stating that for the office of the United States Senator, should a vacancy arise, we shall call a special election. However, the very same style of vacancy regarding our lone seat in the United States Congress, should that vacancy occur, that the governor would still maintain the authority to make that appointment. I'm a little concerned with the inconsistency of this bill, and I really, if we're going to go down this path, I think what's good for the United States Senate should just as well be good for the United States House, and actually should be good for all the offices that we have that we've created for the state of North Dakota. I'm going to vote against this bill, Mr. Speaker.
Representative Straddy.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members of the Assembly, U.S. Constitution has supremacy over ours, plain and simple. And here's what it says. When a vacancy happens in the representation from any state, the executive authority thereof shall issue writs of election to fill such vacancies. It's right there. All this bill is doing exactly what the U.S. House seat is doing. So we're putting it on par with what is required in the U.S. House. I don't see why that's bad public policy. Why would we want to have the authority to appoint a U.S. senator in the hands of one person? I don't care what political party, what day and time we're at. To me, why wouldn't we want the people of North Dakota to vote on this crucial seat? So this is about voting. This is about restoring the power of the people and allowing them to decide who the person should this vacancy occur. It's really that simple. Other states have done it. We've seen a governor go to jail for trying to sell President Obama's Senate seat. When the senator from Montana, he stepped down so the governor could appoint, and therefore he's an incumbent going into the next election. Montana has a law to try to fix that because that's wrong. When you do that, you give that person an unfair advantage. Therefore, they're considered an incumbent. And we all know the power of incumbency is large. What this bill simply does is put both political parties on an even footing should this happen. You get 95 days to get your candidate and go to the election. It's really that simple. It's about letting the people decide who their replacement is. And again, I'll repeat, it is in the U.S. Constitution, and I would argue the reason that the Senate wasn't put in there is because Article 7, or excuse me, the 17th Amendment didn't exist, therefore the power was left in the legislature's hand. Had that, after that amendment, we need, I would argue that we lost the power there, so we're giving the people back the power they rightly deserve.
Representative Kaepernick.
Well, Mr. Speaker, I had a bill up here a few sessions ago addressing this, and I got to add on to what Representative Strily said, because there is a provided of after the 17th, what it says the 17th Amendment in filling vacancies, but it's provided that the legislature of any state may empower the executive, therefore, to make temporary appointments until the people fill the vacancies as the legislature directs. So there is a catch in this, and this bill is the very reason of what Representative Mock was saying, that this is the vehicle that we can, and the 17th Amendment does let us do, to say something about it. So I think this is probably a good way to go with this. The bill I had probably wasn't written right because it included the legislature in the process, but let the people of the process decide what to do. I think vote green on this.
Is there further discussion? The House has before it for final consideration House Bill 1181. The clerk will open the key and you may record your vote. Has every member voted? Do any members wish to change their vote? The key will be closed and the clerk will take the record. The record shows 67 yea, 25 nay, 2 absent not voting. House Bill 1181 is declared passed.